Thank you, and welcome everybody. This is Dr. Dan's Indianapolis, a free group lecture and demonstration, and I am Diane, Dr. Dan's Indianapolis hostess. And we have a room full of beautiful faces here, and I know we have many more on the teleconference. Thank you all for joining us, whether it's in person or over the telephone. We all receive the benefits of this work, regardless of where we are. What we're going to do tonight, for those of you who are new here, is Dr. Dan is going to give a lecture for about 30 minutes or so. He will talk about his healing gift and maybe give you some history about how he came to know it, and also talk about the latest developments and where we are in our ascension process. And then he will give a demonstration of his healing technique on a lucky volunteer who will be chosen through using kinesiology on my feet after the lecture is concluded. If you have questions about what he says, you're not alone. Everybody does. We don't always understand this, and we don't have to in order to receive the benefits of his work. However, he will have multiple points at which he will stop and ask for questions. So if you have a question, feel free to hold on to it, and when you're invited to, you can ask it of him. And then we will have a brief sharing afterwards for anybody who might want to share what their experience was or anything that they feel might benefit the group. You're welcome to do so at the conclusion of this. So with that, thank you all again. Thank you most especially, Dr. Dan, for sharing your incredible gift, and I'll turn this over to you now.
Thank you, Diane, and very lovely to be at your home this evening, and thank you for having us here. I think that'll work. Yes. Yeah, so we're going to have a little talk about Holy Divine Healing, and if you have any question at all, just raise your hand, and we'll get you try to find an answer for you. It'll be 25 years this September, next month, that I've been doing this sacred path. I was a chiropractor whenever this event occurred in my life in August of '94, while on my last day of vacation at my mother-in-law's bay house in South Alabama. I had a heat stroke and went through a tunnel, came out in a beautiful place of 57 androgynes in a circle, and I was in that circle having a telepathic experience, and there were 13 crystal light beings in my presence, and somehow, some way, I understood everything that was going on, and it was quite an amazing orchestration of divine powers that be, and there was this one crystal light being in particular that was kind of in charge of the project that they were doing, and this being was levitating right in front of me, turned sideways. And I was looking at its turquoise and pink jawbone, and about the time I thought how beautiful, it turned and looked me right directly in the face, and this transmission of light came out of its eyes into mine, and it awakened me to my sacred path, and told me lots of information in kind of a coded form. And right after that was over with, I was placed back into the tunnel that brought me there, and away I go. And this time I'm coming back to the earth. I could actually see the earth, and this voice of the highest messenger told me that all of us that are on this earth were put here to learn to trust in our inner holiness. And whether you're doing that or not, it doesn't matter what you say. It's the feelings that you entertain on a regular basis. And if you're doing fear, worry, anxiety, being critical, cynical, and doubtful, you are demonstrating that you are not trusting in your inner holiness. You're trying to navigate your journey on this earth through yourself. And self turns out to be our fractured soul vessel from our downfall world point of impact. And so if you're doing joy and you're happy and gracious, you are yielding to the higher power. And you know, this journey of being in communion with your higher power, you actually have an opportunity to do that every time in your day that you're faced with a problem, a worry, a concern that's in your face. You have you're like at an old change point. You're at an intersection, and you basically have two choices. The human choice, what people normally do when they have a problem in their life, is they try to figure it out and fix it themselves, never realizing that that's actually the least capable part of you to have a good outcome for anything, because self is the fractured soul vessel. It's only 10% conscious and it has no knowing, and it's always under the thumb of the negative ego. The negative ego's purpose is to defend yourself. Its method of doing so is to seize control of your consciousness through a programming of the authority of your outer world. And it varies from person to person what that authority is, but it starts in your childhood. The big people in your life are your authority, and whether it be your parents, teachers, religion, things of this nature, you wind up adopting the beliefs of these authorities. And the interesting thing is that their belief is about the parts of life they have no knowing of, and your belief from them is about the parts of life you have no knowing of. And so that's an interesting thing when you look at it. But, you know, life is very big, and any one person only knows a sliver of life, and it'll have to do with your area of expertise, what you were educated in, what you did for 40 or 50 years of your life. You know all about that part of life. But if you get outside of that, the rest of life, people have no knowing of. Well, that's the part of life that their beliefs are about. You know, nobody knows about heaven and hell and reincarnation, but they certainly have beliefs about it. And so belief is a form of consciousness that the human world runs on. If you do the anatomy on it, it's, you know, it is definitely your opinion about the parts of life you have no knowing of, and it's defended by your ego. People get very upset if you offend their belief, but in actuality, they have it about that which they know not. You know, so that's kind of bizarre, but that's the way the human process actually is. Every single person I've ever done a reading on has an inscription in the crystal lattice of their spirit body of a 700 million year existence that we all had in an ancient world as holy beings of the Holy O before we became human and went to what we call the downfall world. This downfall world is actually a school of understanding, and to go to the school of understanding, you have to check your knowing in at the door and consent to have the components of your soul, spirit, and presence disassembled. And from there, you get to find your way back home. And you have one lesson after the next, and if you learn your lesson, you acquire understanding, and that's the purpose of it. If you take the understanding you're acquiring by learning your lessons and choose to live the parable of being a Christed being with that understanding, this will take you to the headwaters of knowing consciousness, which only comes from your inner divinity. And if your heart beats, it's in there. Every person has an inner divinity, but to be human, you are disconnected from it. And this is why humans have free will and free choice. They can choose anything they please, no matter how hurtful it is to themselves or others. If you're connected to your inner divinity, you will always choose that which glorifies your holy order and benefits all people and makes loving feelings. So that's divine will and divine choice. But you have to be connected to divinity for that to happen. And, the thing about belief consciousness, it's the consciousness of separation because it's not conscious enough to see how life is interconnected. Life is very big, and to encompass all of it, you have to have a knowing consciousness. And so the healing of holy divine healing is a process that's always authored by the living holiness within the person receiving the treatment. I am simply the servant. I have a gift that allows me to do the will of your inner holiness for you, but your inner holiness is the author of it. So I take no credit. I simply enjoy doing the service for people because good things come of it, and I feel like it's the reason that I was planted here on this planet is to do this. So this is my 25th year starting up here in the next month, and I hope to be going for another 25. So we'll see how that all works out. So back to the fork in the road of your problem. You see, the human thing to do is to try to figure it out and fix it yourself. But what a Christed being does, and we can all choose to be a Christed being, is we surrender our problems to our 100% conscious, all-knowing inner holiness to be dealt with. It's really the perfect thing to do. You get the best result when you do that. And all we have to do to lift the burden of the problem off of us is simply agree to yield to the will of our inner holiness. And when you get the whispering voice and the gut knowing, you have to obey it. And thirdly is to show up in your day without apprehension and worry and simply take your next step in trusting your inner holiness. So surrender, yield, and trust are the 3 steps of Christ consciousness. And when you do this, the door opens wide for miracles to come into your life. Tremendous amount of goodness and opportunity will come to you if you put yourself in the position to be shown, told, and led by your inner holiness without any limitations. And when your faith is in trusting the divineness of life, you're always on the cutting edge to be shown, told, and led in the moment with a knowing that'll work for you and you'll never doubt. When your faith is in belief, you don't realize it when you're there, but you're actually telling the Holy Order what it's allowed to be, or you're not going to accept it. And so, another thing about belief while we're on the subject is you can never heal ignorance with belief. That requires knowledge and understanding. And so, it's not the best form of consciousness there is. There is one that's less than that, and that's unbelief. And we'll talk about that in a minute when we get into the ascension process. But everybody in their human condition has a shadow, and that's the part of you that is of low consciousness. It's not illuminated, and it's where your negative feelings come from. So whenever in life you have negative thoughts and feelings, the shadow part of your being is in dominance of your consciousness. And that's always the target of holy divine healing, is to clean out your shadow and then illuminate it with light to bring it into harmony with the divineness of life. And then you overcome things. And it's really a beautiful system how that all works.
And so, Dan, while we can't heal ignorance, even those who might be ignorant, whatever you consider that to be, have the knowledge and wisdom within them when they learn to surrender to their divinity within. We come with that in us. Yeah, but you have to choose that, and that's the trick. You're either going to choose to
try to fix your problem yourself, or you're going to choose to live the parable. So that's a choice that every person makes, and you have the opportunity to get on track with this Christ consciousness several times a day, every time a problem comes up. You're at that change point again.
And so really the solution to the world's problems is quite simple, and that is to learn to surrender to your divinity within.
That's it. Yeah. That's a proven method that actually works. And the treatment when you're on the table is a perfect example of the parable, because we say a little prayer, we turn it over to your inner holiness, and we let your inner holiness speak to your needs. And I do my gift to help make that come about. But the demonstration of holy divine healing is living the parable of Christ consciousness. And so that's kind of gets you jump-started to do the parable in your own life.
And for those people who aren't aware of that consciously in this reality, the work that we do puts the potential out there for them to choose into that.
That's right. Yeah, so you get that opportunity every time a problem comes up. You can learn to handle it in this other way, other than yourself.
Yeah, so the beauty of the plan of grand design is that we not only heal and help ourselves, but in doing so, we heal and help the world at large.
That's it. That's right. Yeah, and and so, I've worked in Holy Divine Healing for 9 years before we had the first paradigm shift in 2003. And then things started really happening. The Akashic Beam quit mutating in 2003. And lots of beautiful things have happened since that time. The paradigms of higher consciousness, all of them are now integrated into the Earth grid. We had a change of the age at the end of the Mayan calendar. And September of 2015, on a full moon eclipse, the downfall world started exiting off the planet. And that was a 6-year project, so we have 2 more years of that from September coming up. And that's really the source of the chaos in the outer world and in people's individual lives, is what that's about. So it's really a fascinating time to be here. This is a planet of ascension, and the line is long to get on this planet. All souls of knowing want to be here, because this is where the demonstration has taken place. So it's really a quite amazing time to be here. And so we've been working really hard for years and years now on cleaning people's shadow and bringing that into a better resolution. And then starting in January of this year, the ascension process of going into higher paradigms of consciousness started in earnest. And this is a very amazing thing. I have a lady in Lake Jackson, Texas, that I've worked with for over 20 years now, probably 22 or 23, and we exchange treatments. And when she works on me, quite frequently, it'll be the next step for me in this ascension process. And in January of this year, while I was at Janet's house and I received her treatment, all of a sudden I saw this beautiful lush path with these beautiful plants, and there was this being walking down this path that was radiating love, had a big smile on his face, and was in a white toga robe type of an attire, and he was clean shaven and had a haircut. And this being was illuminating bubbles were coming off of them, and they were like filled with helium. They were going up really quickly. And this being came and got into my morphic field, and I felt the uplift immediately. I didn't know what it was really at first, and but 10 days later, while at the Collier Spring in Arkansas, I had a communion with this being, and he told me he was the Christ of knowing. And this Christ of knowing is a particle that exists in every single person on the planet in the Trinity of wholeness. Well, the problem is in the human condition, your Trinity is fractured. And when your Trinity is fractured, the Christ of knowing is dormant. And you're not aware that it's there. But as you start really getting serious about healing your shadow, along about Thanksgiving, a little before Thanksgiving, it became the priority in Holy Divine Healing to remove a person's carry-ons. And these are carry-ons like you carry your luggage on the plane. These are the distortions of your holy expression, what your inner divinity calls sin. And they exist in three forms. There's a fractal aberration of your flesh body of the soul. There's a microcosmic aberration of the crystal lattice electromagnetic field of your spirit. And there's a holographic aberration of the pulse of your divine presence. And getting these carry-ons removed will activate your Christ of knowing particle to start awakening. And then the next step, once you've had your carry-ons taken off, is the process of connecting you to your inner divinity begins. And there is a 7-element mechanism called the Holio Royal Correlator that connects you to your inner divinity, and this Christ of knowing particle is what does this for you. And then the next step is your Christ of knowing particle connects you to the Christ matrix grid, which is up the whole of the South Pole in the inner earth. And that's the initial connection. I was wanting to tell you this in the consensual order that it all happened. I might be getting ahead of myself here a little bit. Well, I go back to Texas. I go to Texas 4 times a year. So I go January, March, July, and November. Well, my March trip, we'll see, though, this is still January. When I get around to Austin, Texas, I go to San Antonio and Austin are the first 2 places I go, and that's my first week of a 2-week trip. And then in that second week, I go down to Lake Jackson. And but when I was in Austin, there's a lady, my hostess in Austin, Michelle. She is a composer of crystal lattice, and we can correct and create new crystal lattice. And we were given the assignment to create the crystal lattice that would connect humanity to this Christ matrix grid that's in the center of the earth. And so this crystal lattice turned out to be the Giza Pyramid, the Sphinx, the 999th ley line that the Sphinx left paw is upon, and the South Pole. So I was familiar with the pyramid and the Sphinx and the ley line, but I had no idea about the South Pole. But the South Pole has a hole in it, and this stuff goes up into the South Pole. And this Christ matrix grid is sitting in like the second chakra of the earth. And you know, it's a female planet. And that hole in the South Pole is like a vagina. The second chakra has got this Christ matrix grid that's like a uterus. And then one step above that into the third chakra is the great central sun that has to do with cosmic consciousness that is a little ahead of where I want to talk right at the moment. But we got this crystal lattice completed, and then I get back around to Janet's house, and this time I go through a gate, and before that happened, when I was in San Antonio, I went on a meditation and I asked the Christ of knowing if he had a name, and his name was Victory. And he is our victory over our human condition. And so when I got back to Janet's the next time, I went through a gate, and there was Victory and these 12 council beings, and there were these 6 paths, and each one had a scroll, and they had this bottle of oil that they poured on top of my head, and it went right through my skull into my brain. My brain lit up like a city, and I digested the contents of those scrolls in about 30 seconds. But they were put in like a time capsule. I didn't know what they were at the moment. I get back to Arkansas. I'm working with my oldest son, who's doing the recording on this teleconferencing, and these sacred paths start to come out. And 4 of the 6 paths are the star systems that are built into the Giza pyramid. There's 4 star chambers that point at Orion, Sirius, Alpha Dracona, and Ursa Minor. And these 4 constellations connect to the Christ Matrix grid through our inner divinity. And then there's a connection from the crystal capstone of the Giza pyramid, which fits on that prosthetic head. That's the top of the pyramid right now. That is not the capstone. And the capstone was taken off, and it says it's in the Red Sea at the moment. But there is a pathway from the Giza pyramid capstone to the Christ Matrix grid and then into our inner divinity. And then there is a South Pole pyramid that's in the ice sheath, that's in a remnants of the holy old continent of Hyperborea, and it's Mount Meru. And it says it's the biggest pyramid on the planet, and there is a connection from that pyramid to the Christ Matrix grid through our inner divinity. And once you have all 6 of these pathways, that is the point of no return to the human downfall world. And when I was out at the spring and I was communing with Victory, Victory gave me an Ascension Ladder, and I found it to be very interesting. And this Ascension Ladder, at the very bottom of it, are beings of unbelief. And these are people in the first and second paradigm. And the activity of the first and second paradigm are things like death, destruction, killing, war, robbing, stealing, cheating, lying, politics. And the people in those levels of consciousness, to ascend, they must first be indoctrinated with a belief system from an outer authority of a higher power, a God being, a Jesus model, this kind of thing, in order to get those people off of the first and second paradigm up to the third paradigm. And this is a wonderful job that religion has done to get people off the bottom floor. That is the hardest thing to do. I'm certainly glad I don't work there. I get to work on the cutting edge of higher consciousness. I'm not near tough enough to do what the people of religion do and getting those people off. And I commend them for doing an amazing job. And then once you get to belief consciousness, this is where you're having your lessons in life. And if you learn the lesson, you acquire understanding. And if you take the understanding and you apply it to your willingness to live the parable of being a Christed being, this will take you to the headwaters of knowing consciousness that comes from your inner holiness. And from there, there's general knowing, absolute knowing, Christ knowing, cosmic knowing, and at the very top is goddess knowing, and that's where our androgyne function resides. And at this present time, we have completed the Christ Matrix grid for the people that are on this path. Almost every one of them have all of that now. And the next thing up the ladder is cosmic consciousness, and that's That's what we're dealing with on this trip. And in our group healing on Sunday, we will be connecting the crystal lattice to connect people to cosmic consciousness. We will be bringing that forth for humanity in our group healing. Group healings are always for humanity, to pass this on to the masses. And this crystal lattice for cosmic consciousness has got 3 components: Stonehenge, the 954th ley line, and the great central sun that's up the whole of the South Pole and 1 chakra higher than the Christ matrix grid. It's actually at the solar plexus. And so there will be 2 clearings, 2 ascension keys, and 2 earth equivalences for each one of those 3 parts that we'll be doing in our group healing on Sunday. So cosmic consciousness is what's the next frontier. And, the Christ consciousness, the initiator for that was about trusting in our inner holiness. And so through trust, you start receiving knowing from your inner divinity. Well, this cosmic consciousness, it goes up an octave, and it's actually about the 9 knowing centers of our brain. I'm sure everyone here has heard that humans use 1/10 of their brain. Well, 90% of the human brain is dormant and has been since the great downfall. That's why people in their own brain function, they lack knowing consciousness. And there was a a block that I was experiencing getting this cosmic being that came into my field the last time I was at Janet's in July. And this being, he didn't have a body that I could see. The light was so bright, I couldn't see any kind of a celestial body or intergalactic body, any kind of a body. It was a light signature. And since the time that happened, I've had 3 encounters with this being, and it's always as a light signature. And the second encounter I had with this being was in a meditation on Big Rock in the town I live in. There's a 1,000-acre slab of bedrock, of granite, that I walk around every morning. And down the river valley, or up the river valley, is Mount Pinnacle, which looks just like a pyramid with a flat top. I meditate on this on Pinnacle Mountain, or looking at it from this slab of granite that I stand upon. And so I was doing a meditation on it. This light signature comes out of the top, and then a tornado type of an object comes out of the top, and that tornado kind of lays down to where I can see the end of it, and the end of it looked like a cross-section of a giant tree. It had 57 rings, and that tornado came all the way across the river valley to where I was standing, and that flat part of it fit right on top of my crown chakra. And initially, it made my brain ache. It like hurt way deep in my brain, and I could see hair that was all tied in knots, like my granddaughter's hair is when she wakes up in the morning. She's got knots and all that you got to brush out. And that's how my brain felt. And it was 2% functioning when I did the tests on it, and now it's up to 92%. So it's come a long way in a couple of weeks. And that device has a way of combing the knots out of your brain structure. And so, but anyway, the cosmic consciousness, one step up the ladder from Christ consciousness, is about knowing and having knowing consciousness. So that will be returning to humanity and the earth shortly. I've already got people that have started the process, and we're going to do a lot more on this Sunday. It'll be all about that. Okay, any questions anybody might have so far?
How do you ask questions about all that?
Question is, where is the 954th ley line?
Yeah. Well, the 954th ley line goes from Stonehenge, and on its route to the South Pole, somewhere it intersects the 999th ley line that goes from the Giza Pyramid. It's under the left paw of the Sphinx. And interestingly enough, 3 nines is 27, which is 9, and 9, 5, and 4, 18, which is 9. So they're both 9s. I thought that was interesting. But they both cross the South Pole. Mm-hmm.
And so, Dan, when you talk about all this, really isn't what you're saying in a simplified way that what we're doing is reconnecting and actually rebuilding the energetic circuitry that allows us to connect as individuals with the planet and with the cosmos without any distortion or mutation of the light.
Yeah, and that's exactly the way it was, and we were before we went to the School of Understanding. And all of these ancient artifacts, relics on the earth, like the Giza Pyramid, like Stonehenge, they were all a part of this holy old earth before we went to the School of Understanding.
Well, and they kept the energy moving. They formed an integral part of the energetic circuitry that allowed this planet to vibrate at such a high frequency that we could be, do, see, have, and know things that we can't even fathom at this point.
Yeah, that's right. And we were members of the Galactic Federation. We got separated from all of that when we went into belief consciousness, the great separator.
And so really what we're doing is we are reclaiming our divine heritage and we are returning ourselves to our own home within.
Except in a bigger way. When things are broken, to make them whole again, you got to make it part of a bigger model, and that's exactly what's happening. And to fuel that bigger model, there's already been 2 more galaxies put into each cosmos. They used to have 13, they now have 15. And so that's always the way it is. So it's going to be bigger and better than it was originally, and that will be our evolution.
And so for those of us here in these human bodies, what this is going to mean in part is the reactivation of 90% of our brain, which allows us to access an incredible amount of data and information and feedback and perception to inform every choice that we make. So we are going to not only be bigger beings, but we're going to make better choices that are resonant and in the best interests of all life everywhere.
Yeah, because we're connected. And divine choice and divine will, you always do the right thing. You always seek to glorify the holy order. And it always makes loving feelings. So. And
the reason you do is because you can see a bigger picture. And when you can see a bigger picture, it's because your consciousness has expanded, which is why Dan teaches that the solution to our dilemma is to raise our consciousness.
Yeah, raise our consciousness, choose to yield to the higher power. Choice is very important. You can choose to try to do it yourself, but you'll have a miserable experience. That's pretty much how that pans out. Yes.
Can I ask where Atlantis and Lemuria fit in?
Where do Atlantis and Lemuria fit in?
Yeah, they were holy continents. They were holy continents. Lemuria was a holy continent. In its downfall, it created a matriarchal society. And then Atlantis was a holy continent that was in the Holy O for a long time, but then it also went through a downfall and it became a patriarchal society. The society we're in right now is of the Atlantean society.
Thank you.
Yeah. Yes.
Harriet?
Going along, similar kind of question.
Similar kind of question on geography.
The El Camino de Santiago.
The El Camino Santiago, does it have any connection?
I'm not familiar with that, so I can't really. Yeah, I've know about people walking that. Yeah, I've heard of people doing that, but I don't know why they do it or what that's about.
Do you get any information, Dan, on the geographic changes that the planet will be undergoing?
No. Okay. No, I haven't.
Can you talk a little bit about the parable?
Can you talk about the parable?
Yeah, the parable of Christ consciousness is a method of reconnecting to one's inner divinity, and it's through surrendering your problems to the higher power, yielding to the will of the higher power, and taking your next step in trusting the higher power. And that higher power is the divinity of life that beats your heart. And to be in harmony with that is the greatest thing a person can do. And you know, in the natural world, the beautiful thing about it is that the intelligence that makes it happen comes included. And to work with that intelligence, it's never about you duplicating it with your educated brain. It's always about knowing your role to play to gain the desired result. It's like growing a garden. You don't have to know what the seed knows to do that, but you do need to know when to plant, how to plant, and how to take care of plants. And you can have a bountiful harvest if you get the weather to cooperate. But the intelligence of life that runs the natural world makes the world go around. It always comes with the system. And so that's the beautiful thing about it. And learning our role to play is very critical.
I used to think that we were the dominant species on this planet, and I've come to see that we would not survive without this planet, and that it's a great conscious being itself which actually supports our life.
So true. Yeah, it's a wonderful hostess, and we need to be very grateful for our wonderful hostess.
And so the work that you do, Dan, in sacred geometry is the organizing principle of all life, and it's what organizes all natural life. And this is the work that you do. The blessings and the healings are done through sacred geometry.
Yeah, and that part of it I don't even have to consider because it comes as a part of it. And that's the intelligence of life that handles all of that.
And sacred geometry is simply a multidimensional form of geometry, if you will, and it is what the matrices are organized by, and the matrices of life are the forms that hold the factors in place that create our realities. So we are working with those forms when we do our work with you.
Yeah. It's an automatic process, and so. But what our focus needs to be on is when you're at that fork in the road and you're facing a problem, you're either going to try to fix it yourself or you're going to do the parable. And you have to be conscious to do the parable because we got a lot of habitual pattern ingrained of trying to do it ourselves. But that will always be a limiting outcome, where the other one is unlimited. And it's much more fun to do the Christ conscious thing.
One of the things I've struggled with this, being an attorney as I am, is that I like to have a plan and I want to know how things are going to work out. And one of the things Dan has taught me is that when we practice the parable, it's one step at a time. And so I don't know how it's going to work out. And if I try to figure out how it's going to work out and control things so it works out that way, I'm limiting the holiness of life, which is an otherwise unlimited, infinitely potential outcome, and I'm limiting it. So I have to get myself out of the way and accept that I don't know how things are going to work out, but I know what my next step is, and that's all I need to know.
Yeah, the next step is always doable. And that's what keeps things unfolding. That's what keeps you on track, is just showing up and taking your step in trust. I don't have a clue what the next step will be, but I understand that if I do it through the parable, it'll happen. It'll be perfect. And it always is. It's been that way for 25 years, and it's just it's a beautiful system that all people can embark upon. If you work on this relationship with your inner divinity, that's the key. And, so that's how it all works out. It always works out. Yes, Hope?
I need a repeat of three things
She needs a
I can
repeat.
ask afterwards, but the fractal alteration.
The fractal alteration.
And then
Yeah,
microcosmic.
you're talking about the
Microcosmic.
Carryons.
The Carryons,
Yeah, a fractal, microcosmic, and holographic.
And they're all alterations.
Yeah, they're aberrations. Yeah,
Okay, thank you.
yeah. Those are the three forms of creation. Yeah, and so we can deal with all of that.
Thank you.
You're very welcome. Okay, anybody got any more questions? Yeah, David?
Still, with what you're working, something comes up, you want it to go away or be transmuted or something, still the same. Go to Holy Old Portal.
Yeah, that works real good. And,
That's not the simplest, isn't it?
Yeah, that's simple. Yeah.
Miglio Meglius or the Holio Moon Portal?
Yeah, the moon portal works best. As the further up the Ascension Ladder we go, the deeper into the shadow gets purged. And just 2 or 3 weeks ago, before I got ready to go to Texas, the power of the clearings went down to the level of our matrix, which is our motherboard. And it's really interesting. All aspects of our soul, spirit, and presence, our 7 levels of consciousness, and the activities of our life are all created on our matrix. And that's our motherboard. And whenever you do a matrix healing, the date given will always be OAD. Well, that's the old change point between BC and AD. And when they stop the timeline, you see the divine flow of life travels down the timeline, and when they stop the timeline, the divine flow of life did a head-on collision with our matrix. And a lot of our deepest ingrained problems that we have are issues with our matrix. And so it's been really wonderful to heal on that level this time through Texas and now Indianapolis. But to give you an example, I had a lady that had a heart condition, and I asked her in her holiness how many problems was with her heart. It said 7. And then I said, how many problems with her heart matrix? And it was 6 billion. Well, if you do the heart, which is above the matrix, you can get rid of those 7 things, but it's just a matter of time before it'll bubble up from the matrix, those 6 billion things, and reinfect it. But if you clean it off at the matrix, you got it, and to get the motherboards cleaned has really been a wonderful advancement of the healing power of this process.
So it sounds like it's also healing all all aspects of our life expression from all points in time and space.
It is, yeah. That matrix is a very important thing to have cleaned. And you're going to get, it's a messy world to live in. You're going to get contamination of the bad stuff in life gets on you as you live life. And to have a method of removing that tremendously improves the quality of your daily living. So it's a good thing to periodically get a tune-up, get retoned, get your motherboards cleaned up. It makes a big difference in the quality of your life. All right, any other comments or questions about it? I think I've talked about everything that I wanted to. Can you think of anything I missed?
I can't.
Well, why don't we do a demonstration? We're going to get Diane up here, and her inner holiness, through her leg length, will choose the next person on the table. I never have anything to do with that. I'm just the person that reads the leg lengths. And tonight's Lucky Door Half Prize winner is Eric.
Hey, Eric.
All right, Eric. Good to see you, man. All right. If I tell Eric's feet to give me a yes, his right leg goes short. Give me a no, his left leg goes short. So that's what I'm doing, is I'm just checking for yes and no. Okay. This session for Eric is orchestrated by a living holiness that beats his heart. Dan is a servant with a Christed conscience. Okay, holiness and Eric, you know everything about Eric from A to Z. You know everything going on in his life, and you know what we need to do here. And the answer is yes to all of that. And everybody in here will get zapped by this session. And there it is. That's good. Just leave it down here. Okay, we're going to do 2 Celtic loops, and our first one, I am A. And these Celtic loops get the tumbler set right so the lock will open. Oh, what's that?
On the matrix.
Well, yeah, get the lock open so we can work on Eric. O iota, omega, O alpha, omega, O alpha, O iota, O alpha, O iota, omega. And the lock opens. It opens up. Okay. 3, 2. 2 things to clear. Clearings are about the shadow. OAD. And our first thing will be Eric's flesh body matrix of his soul. And his 9 pulses of creation matrix of his presence. Okay, we want to clear 6 mutating models from Eric's live stream of 78, 67, 22, 7, 2, and 1. 6 other things, 9 courtings, 6 Yahweh blocks. Pull all of this out of Eric's 9 pulses of creation matrix of his fractured presence and all of its discord of belief out of his flesh body matrix of his fractured soul from OAD Remove all contraptions, issues, collateral issues, all debris of the downfall world, all manifestations of all creations, of 6 mutating models from Eric's live stream of 78, 67, 22, 7, 2, and 1, 6 other things, 9 courtings, 6 Yahweh blocks. Pull all of this out of Eric's 9 pulses of creation matrix and all of its discord of belief out of his flesh body matrix and make it true for Eric. And then bring forth all aspects of Eric's 9 pulses of creation matrix, of his divine presence, of his androgyne being, and all of its relationships through goddess knowing with his flesh body matrix of his holy soul, of his divine masculine, into Eric's divinity, into the holy order of O of Eric, through holy O pure perfection 3 times and make it true. How many platforms to be cleared? 6 quadrillion and 8 platforms. Deposit all of it into the holy O moon portal for disposal, clearing, and cleansing. To holy O pure perfection. To holy O pure perfection. To holy O pure perfection. And it is done. Very good. Okay, this next clearing involves the crystal lattice matrix of Eric's fractured spirit body and its discord of belief going into his mental body of his fractured trinity matrix. And this crystal lattice matrix of the fractured spirit is the source of all belief generators. And so we're going to clean this up and put it back into his divine expression. Want to clear 4 mutating models from Eric's live stream of 78, 57, 72, and 1. 2 other things, 3 courtings, 6 trillion, quadrillion, and 2 resisting invaders. Pull all of this out of Eric's crystal lattice matrix of his fractured spirit and all of its discord of belief out of his mental body matrix of his fractured trinity from OAD. Remove all contraptions, issues, collateral issues, all debris of the downfall world, all manifestations of all creations, of 4 mutating models from Eric's live stream of 78, 57, 72, and 1, 2 other things, 3 courtings, 6 quadrillion, and 2 resisting invaders. Pull all of this out of Eric's crystal lattice matrix and all of its discord of belief out of his mental body matrix and make it true for Eric. And then bring forth all aspects of Eric's crystal lattice matrix of his Holy Spirit, of his divine feminine, and all of its relationships through goddess knowing with his mental body matrix of his trinity of wholeness, into Eric's divinity, into the holy order of O of Eric, through holy O pure perfection 3 times and make it true. How many platforms to be cleared? 6 quadrillion and 2 platforms. Deposit all of it into the Holy O Moon portal for disposal, clearing, and cleansing. To Holy O Pure Perfection. To Holy O Pure Perfection. To Holy O Pure Perfection. And it is done. Okay, the next thing we need to do is put 2 ascension keys into the void we've created by doing our clearing. And the purpose of these ascension keys are to heal all things cleared, to fill our void perfectly and completely, and to interface all blessings of higher consciousness required to create Holy O Pure Perfection 3 times in Eric's life. And we have 20 of these keys, and Eric's Inner Holiness will choose the appropriate 2. Our first one is the 4th key, the feeling of love, the 6th paradigm of having loving feelings as a result of experiences in life with others, the clear emerald crystal light, and the 15 galaxies of this cosmos. Now fill the void created from this clearing in order to heal all things cleared, to fill the void perfectly and completely, and to interface all blessings of higher consciousness required to bring forth Holy O Pure Perfection 3 times in Eric's life. And it is done. And the 16th key, the feeling of virtuous, 8 to the power 5 to the power of 7th paradigm of Eric's Earth Goddess realm, the clear octave ruby red crystal light, and the North Star now fill the void created from our clearing in order to heal all things cleared, to fill our void perfectly and completely, and to interface all blessings of higher consciousness required to bring forth Holy O Pure Perfection 3 times into Eric's life. And it is done. Very good. Okay, now we need to get a new Celtic loop, AMI. O alpha, omega, O iota, omega, O iota, O alpha, O iota, O alpha, omega. Want to clear 1 mutating model from Eric's live stream of 786,278,977. Pull all of this out of the cosmic being and all of its discord of belief out of the Christ of knowing. Now, for Eric, remove all contraptions, issues, collateral issues, all debris of the downfall world, all manifestations of all creations, of 1 mutating model from Eric's live stream of 786,278,977. Pull all of this out of the cosmic being and all of its discord of belief out of the Christ of knowing and make it true for Eric. And then bring forth all aspects of the cosmic being of the holy order of O of our androgyne being and all of its relationships through Goddess knowing with the Christ of knowing of our Trinity of wholeness, and to Eric's divinity, into the holy order of O of Eric, through Holy O Pure Perfection 3 times, and make it true. How many platforms to be cleared? 6 quadrillion and 8 platforms. Deposit all of it into the Holy O Moon portal for disposal, clearing, and cleansing. To Holy O pure perfection. To Holy O pure perfection. To Holy O pure perfection. And it is done. Want to clear one mutating model from Eric's live stream of 787,568. Pull all of this out of the constellation of Arcturus and all of its discord of belief out of the great central sun. For Eric, now, remove all contraptions, issues, collateral issues, all debris of the downfall world, all manifestations of all creations, of one mutating model of Eric's live stream of 787,568. Pull all of this out of the constellation of Arcturus and all of its discord of belief out of the great central sun and make it true for Eric, and then bring forth all aspects of the constellation of Arcturus, of this Oniverse, of the 9-cluster, all that is of the Holy O, and all of its relationships through Goddess knowing with the great central sun of the Holy O Earth, into Eric's divinity, into the Holy Order of O of Eric, through Holy O pure perfection 3 times, and make it true. How many platforms to be cleared? 6 quadrillion and 8 platforms. Deposit all of it into the Holy O Moon portal for disposal, clearing, and cleansing. To Holy O pure perfection. To Holy O pure perfection. To Holy O pure perfection. And it is done. And 2 more ascension keys. The 11th key, the feeling of honest, the 655th paradigm of absolute honesty, the clear green crystal light, and the constellation of JGG. Now fill the void created from our clearing in order to heal all things cleared, to fill the void perfectly and completely, and to interface all blessings of higher consciousness required to bring forth Holy O pure perfection 3 times into Eric's life. And it is done. And the 13th key, the feeling of bliss, the old paradigm of the creation of the holy being of the Holy O of Eric, who has a knowing consciousness, understands all of life, has returned to innocence, is connected to his divinity, is connected to the Christ matrix grid, and is connected to the great central sun, and the clear purple crystal light, the constellation of Pleiades, now fill the void created from our clearing in order to heal all things cleared, to fill the void perfectly and completely, and to interface all blessings of higher consciousness required to bring forth Holy O pure perfection 3 times into Eric's life. And it is done. Okay, it's going to take Eric about 3 days to transform through all that we've done. And from this session, Eric has received 100, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, 9, 8. 1,787.9 million blessings of higher consciousness, and this will fuel Eric's ascension into higher levels of consciousness, blessing him with the ability to create bigger and bigger pictures of life that will encompass the challenging issues of his life, and he will see these things in a new light of higher consciousness, come to a higher level of understanding, and have his moment of truth and get free, and have a far greater capacity to keep his life in a really good place. So that looks just really great. Eric is all cleaned up. All right. Anybody got any questions about anything we did there? Eric, you can come on up. Very honored to do that for you. So, yeah, that was a very good matrix healing. We totally cleaned the matrix of Eric's soul, spirit, and presence, of his flesh, body, crystal lattice, and his 9 pulses of creation. And then also he receives some connections to cosmic consciousness in addition to that. So Eric he's been around this work for a long time, but I haven't worked on him in a while. So I was very pleased to see that he was connected to his divinity, and he had the connections to the Christ Matrix grid. And so you're on the right track, my friend. Doing good.
Maybe those are the connections I was seeing, because while you were on the table, I saw all the drop spin off of everybody, and then umbilical cord, like energetic umbilical cords connecting all beings and all life. And I felt the message, how can we not love our fellow man when we are, and the land upon which we walk, when we are all connected in utero. And it was an overpowering love for all of life, seeing it in a connected way that I've not seen it before.
Beautiful. Yeah, that's wonderful. Yeah, and it's we just have to have a higher consciousness and belief. That's the consciousness that separates us, and through acquiring the understanding that we've acquired by having these experiences in our school of understanding, and then the willingness to live the parable of being a Christed being, which is your free choice. That's what makes this thing go. And so everybody can do this, and everybody will do this. And as more people do it, it's easier for those that haven't yet to do it. So there's a lot of beautiful things that are all attached to this. And in higher consciousness, everything is interconnected. So,
and that's so huge, because when you see the interconnections, you recognize that I am you and you are me. And how could I do anything but love me and love you?
It definitely promotes that.
I don't have to come up with any plan for world peace or how to solve the nuclear arms race. I just get to recognize the inherent divine connection of all life, and it automatically infuses and fills me with love that heals all.
Excellent. Well said. Anybody got any questions or like to add to this some? Yes, David.
On average, I seem to remember about a half a year ago starting to have the keys. Are you finding on average more keys are going into a person now than 6 months ago or something like that?
Well, every time you do a clearing, you put a key in the place of it, because a clearing will leave a void, and you don't want to leave voids. And so that's what the Ascension keys were originally. They were created to fill the void of the clearing, and but they have they not only fill the void, but they heal what you've cleared, and they interface these blessings of higher consciousness that will bring forth holy, old, pure perfection in the place of that clearing that you did. And, before the Ascension keys, when I get through doing a clearing on you, I would read one blessing of higher consciousness. And Eric tonight, he got hundreds of millions of them. And they're all in the hard drive of the Earth grid, and only Ascension keys is the only thing I know of that can fill that void up with blessings of higher consciousness. So Ascension keys have been a big advancement of this process. And I'm so thankful for them, because I don't have to do the blessings of higher consciousness. For years I drew those out, but no more.
Yeah, so Ascension keys are really a form of conscious creation with the divine.
It really is. Yeah. And we have 20 of them. So there's one to fit every situation.
Which is what is creating the Holy Earth.
Yeah.
So the same key might be used a second or third or fourth time in a process with the same person.
I've never had that happen. I've never used but one key per person. That I might use 3 or 4 of them, but it'll be 3 or 4 different ones. I've never had to, do more than use one more than once for a person's private session. That's never happened. Not that it couldn't. Maybe it will sometime, but it hadn't yet.
Well, have you used them again in a subsequent session?
All the time.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay, any other comments or feelings or thoughts about it all? How are y'all doing?
Great.
All is well? Feeling real mellowed out? Okay. Anything else you'd like to say, Diane?
I also have been feeling very strongly the planetary consciousness and connection in our crystal kingdom.
Okay, yeah. Yeah, that's like the nervous system of the planet, and we did a good job on that at Peace Valley.
And then some significant work on the crystal kingdom in terms of removing a complete blockage relative to the transmissions of the neutron stars.
Right.
Which is perfecting their higher expression, or its higher expression. Feeling that. And also there's a number of people have been commenting about things going on with their eyes.
Yeah. Yeah, there is a connection of our eyes with cosmic consciousness. And you see, in our wholeness, we are a 57-dimensional being. The 52nd dimension is our eyes, and that's the only dimension out of the 57 that has a 8th star system. The rest all have 7. But our eyes has an 8th system, and that 8th star system is involved in the transmission of cosmic consciousness from Stonehenge down the 954th ley line into the great central sun, and that will actually be a part of our group healing on Sunday. But eyes have been a big thing this time. So
if you are experiencing some dysfunction with your eyes, surrender it to your divinity within and trust that this is going to work through as we work through and step into a higher level of expression.
Yeah.
Our bodies are mutating is what's happening.
Yeah, they are. They're going back to our holy expression. And we're coming out of our downfall world disconnect and being in separation. We're getting through all of that and getting back into our connection. So that's a beautiful thing.
And part of what you're seeing as you're stepping into cosmic consciousness, and we all are right there too, and experiencing formless expressions of life.
Right.
Light signatures, as you call them.
Mm-hmm.
There's an infinite variety of life out there. This is just another example.
Yeah. Yeah. All right. Any other questions? We ready to close it on down? All right. Well, thank y'all so much on the phone for joining us this evening, and hopefully you made some sense out of all of that. I kind of feel like I've been rambling, but that seems to be my style. Anyway, I wish you a good evening, and thank you very much for participating in this, and hope you feel amazing.
And on Sunday, we'll have a group healing.
And Sunday, we'll have a group healing at 2 o'clock Eastern, 1 o'clock Central, 12 o'clock Rocky Mountain, 11 o'clock West Coast. I hope I got all that in the right order, and it wasn't backwards. Yeah. Well, thank y'all so much, and until next time, may your higher consciousness be with you.
Yay. Thank you for joining us on the phone.
Yeah.